For those of you who have followed more or less what I've been doing in terms of speaking, I don't know if you noticed, but always, the very first page usually has a drawing or something that represents the subject. And I said, well, okay, what am I going to draw here? And I found out it's very easy. We don't have any enemies, so let's just leave it blank. That's why it's all blank like that. We don't have any enemies, right? Wishing, huh? Okay, we're going to start in 1957, Alabama, when Dr. Martin Luther King in the Dexter Avenue, he was a Baptist pastor, so he delivers one of the two most famous speeches of U.S. history, one of them being I Have a Dream, and the other one is called Loving Your Enemies. I'm just going to read one paragraph out of this, out of the whole speech, and it goes like this. Love has within it a redemptive power, and there is a power that eventually transforms individuals. That's why Jesus says, love your enemies. Because if you hate your enemies, you have no way to redeem and to transform your enemies. But if you love your enemies, you will discover that at the very root of love is the power of redemption. You just keep loving these people and keep loving them, even though they're mistreating you. He's a person who is a neighbor, and this person is doing something wrong to you, and all of that. Just keep being friendly to that person. Keep loving them. Don't do anything to embarrass them. Just keep loving them, and they can't stand it for too long. Oh, well, they will react in many ways in the beginning. They react with bitterness because they're mad, because you love them like that. They react with guilt feelings, and sometimes they'll hate you a little more at the transition period, but just keep loving them. And by the power of your love, they will break down under the load. That's love, you see. It is redemptive. And that is why Jesus says, love. There's something about love that builds up and is creative. There is something about hate that tears down and is destructive. So it's a very powerful message. It's a very direct message also. And he was not the one who created this. He is just transmitting something that we had learned many, many years ago when Jesus comes and says, love your enemies. And this is a challenge for us. It is a challenge because it's like two words that don't go well together on the same phrase. Love and enemies. How come? So either he didn't say that, which it wasn't true, or we didn't grasp the meaning. So that's what we're going to try to develop here today. Let's reflect upon what is said. And here's the famous passage. You heard what was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That's from the first Revelation, right? When Moses comes on. But I tell you, love your enemies. Not only that, look at this, and pray for them. That's even worse. Grasping the meaning of loving an enemy is already so difficult. Praying for them, it became, now the challenge is really getting difficult. So let's try to work on this a little bit, on this message. Let's try to understand, first of all, this here. Do we know how to love? Because we might not know. He's saying something that we don't really know. So do we know how to love? In our days, in our society, we usually love in a very empowering way. We love something, not only people, things. We love things and people that will give us something in return. We'll make a profit, if you will, out of it. There's an expected return on that investment. It works like an investment. And this is what we do usually. We are fulfilling our own interests. If we go for this meaning, we're not going to understand what is said, because that's not the kind of love he said. We should be loving in a different way. We should be loving like this. Surrender. That's what love is. Love ties into surrendering. When I'm going to give myself, deliver myself to a higher entity to understand what he's saying. And not only that, if you think, for example, let's just take a popular example. Let's say I just love somebody very much, okay, and I want to marry this person. The standard way is I'm going to go to this person and say, well, I want to tell you something. I love you so much. I'm deeply, madly in love with you. So what we're going to do is we're going to get married, okay? And this thing about you're going to school and doing your thing, no, stop that. Just come to me and we're going to live together because I'm in love with you. So whatever your plans are, that kind of doesn't matter anymore. That's how we do. Now, could we do something like this, us here? Now, could we do something like this? There's somebody that loves us very much. She's, let's say, madly in love with me. I'm not necessarily on the same level. I just like her, okay? But she comes to me and I feel that. There's a strong desire for living together and so and so. Would I be able, or us, would we be able to say, I've noticed that you love me so much. You're deeply, madly in love with me. So I'm going to marry you to make you happy. Are we ready to do a commitment like this? I doubt it. We don't see this out there every day because there's no return in that. What do I make out of this thing? What do I take home from this supposedly madly or deeply fall in love with? So we don't really do things outside of our realm. It has to have some sort of return within my domain. And that's why we can't understand what is said. Because an enemy does not belong to my domain. In the sense of the word enemy, as we know it. He doesn't belong to my domain. My domain is me, maybe my family, my friends, my co-workers, some of them, not all. My universe of, I'm not going to say friends, but my universe of not enemies is very limited. And then we can't understand what is said. It doesn't make any sense. So we are obviously not understanding the right way. At his time, the word love had 4 meanings. Okay, when 2,000 years ago in this current society at this time. First is the general meaning of eros, which is where the word erotic comes from. It's a strong desire, physical desire. There's a second meaning, which is philos, like philanthropy and words like that. That has to do with a two-way love, but not necessarily a deep commitment. It's just fraternity, just very, very superficial. It's very superficial. A third meaning is stanger. Stanger it's related to a familiar way of love, not necessarily relatives and family, blood family. For example, a lot of us have in the family people that grew up with us. It might be a maid that stayed in the house for a long time. It might be somebody that was adopted. So it's not blood family, but it will be included in this kind here. That's what it means. That's stanger. We live on stanger. Our kind of love that we live here is stanger. But he wasn't saying this. He was on the fourth level, on the fourth meaning, which is the unconditional love. And that complicates everything because what is this unconditional love? How do I deal with this? Do I know this thing? Well, let's think about this. Unconditional love is not imprisoning love. You see, when I say, like in the beginning, I tell her, you're going to come here because I love you, you got to stay with me. There's imprisonment here. Okay, she's going to have to stop thinking about going to school or going to a job or moving out to another city. Stop that. So there are strings attached. But Jesus is saying something about an unconditional love, which is completely liberating. It liberates us. There are no strings attached whatsoever of any kind, of any possibility for anything like this. And that is the hard way. We don't know how to do this, do we? Well, we've seen it before. We just don't know how to keep that going all the time. Emmanuel tells us that unconditional love is God's love in a man's heart. And not only that, I've mentioned this a couple of times here before. If you think of your 2-3-year-old, okay, that comes to you with a fist like this, and I want to kill you because whatever, it doesn't matter. I want to kill you today. I hate you, something like that. What do? You do the same thing? You do your fist like this and yeah, let's fight? We don't do that. We stop everything. We drop the world, literally, okay? We pick that child up, give him the most possible amount of love that we can. And we hold them for, let's say, 5 minutes, because we can't do for much longer than that. It's complicated. But within those 5 minutes, there are no bills, there's no traffic, there's no bad neighbor, there's no boss, there's no nothing. we drop the world. Those 5 minutes are a grasp, a glimpse of unconditional love. So it's not that we don't know, we kind of don't live by it because it's too difficult. But we've seen it. We've seen it before. We've felt it before in little pieces throughout the current lifetime. Most of us have. So how do we keep this thing going, right? It's complicated. Now, you see, to love unconditionally my own child, I can only do for 5 minutes. How can I do the same thing to my enemy? So there's something that we're missing, right? So here again, the question, do we know how to love? Not really. We don't. Not in the sense that Jesus came to teach us and tell us. The presence of the word enemies in our vocabulary automatically tells us that we don't know how to love. Because if we knew, we wouldn't have any enemies. It's either or. If I have enemies, if I consider that if the word enemies comes through my mind all the time, I do not know how to love unconditionally. And this is a very interesting phrase that we should think about. Love is measured by the sacrifice, not by the enjoyment. This is a very interesting thing. You see, when we love like we do today, like we do here, we're looking for enjoyment. That's not it. We need to look for something else which requires sacrifice. Okay? Now, so let's try to understand what these enemies really are, who they are, and all these 4 things that I put here. Let's try to develop a little reflection on this thing to see what we can get out of it. So who are these enemies? Where are they? How can I find them? Because I'm supposed to love them, right? So I need to go to them and say, I love you. Right? That's basically what we're thinking at the incarnate level that we are now. So let's explore a little bit. Who are these enemies? We can consider these enemies in 2 forms, just as a general classification, nothing black and white. But they could be something. It could be something related to physical contact. Sometimes we don't like a person because we think they're gonna threaten us physically. We just don't want to be close to them. You know, it happens a lot when you're a kid, something like that. So something physical, like a direct conflict. But there's also the enemy that's not related to anything physical. It's just like more, we do not align with them. There's some sort of antipathy in there. And I've listed some of these things. This here could be an incarnate or discarnate because it's not physical. On the physical level, it has to be somebody incarnate. In here, at the antipathy level, it doesn't necessarily is somebody incarnate. It could be somebody that's discarnate. And then we have obsessions and different things, but that's a whole different story. But again, it's something that diverts from our own interests. It takes away from comfort zones. Things like this. So it's not really physical, but it makes us feel uncomfortable. So these are 2 general types of what we would call in our vocabulary enemies. Now how about Jesus? Who are the enemies of Jesus? Because he's the modeling guide. I want to learn with him. So let's see what he did to his enemies, right? Is Judas one of his enemies? No. It's not. Judas is not one of his enemies. Are the Sadducees, the high level of the Sanhedrin, enemies? No. The Sadducees considered Jesus an enemy, but Jesus never considered the Sadducees enemies. How about the Pharisees? Same thing. So he himself had no enemies. Okay, so that's becoming more complicated now because he didn't have any enemies, but he was clashing all the times with these Pharisees and Sadducees, and he was bombarded with these Pharisees asking him questions and trying to put him under traps, and he was always in a good state of mind. He never reacted to anything like that. That's what we need to learn. Allan Kardec, in the book The Gospel, in the book What is Spiritism, which is a response to the first publication, the Spirit's book, he has a passage of about 3 paragraphs where he touches about imperfections and different levels, and that's what it is. Imperfections and hostilities have to do with the level of evolution. He is at a different level. He's up here. I'm not. I'm down here. That's why he's my modeling guide, because I need to learn what he learned throughout many, many, many lives to get up to this, the point that he is. And that is what we need to find out how. So first thing we need to, towards that path, the first thing we need to stop doing is labeling. Because that's what we do all the time. When I label somebody as an enemy, not necessarily that supposedly enemy knows that he is my enemy. It's something that I create, it's within my domain. If he's supposedly an enemy, to begin with, he's not part of my domain. So how can I tag him as my enemy? It doesn't even make sense if you think about it. At a higher level, not the physical level, at a higher level, it doesn't even make sense, but we still do, and we support that. And not only that, we support and we pridefully keep saying that. Oh yeah, no, that's my enemy, I know, I remember what he did to me. And we keep doing that all the time. Wrong way. We're not tagging people as enemies correctly. We are judging people. If we are judging, we're not revealing what they are. We are revealing, I am revealing who I am. That's the first thing. So now it's getting complicated, because the enemy thing, okay, it's getting out of their court. It's coming to mine. The ball is on the way to my court now. So I need to be at least alert to, when the ball hits here, what am I going to do? It's coming over. One of the things that I mentioned last time, and I always say this, is the story about the orange juice. I'm going to repeat because it's important. What's inside an orange juice without opening it? What can you tell me it's inside? What's inside an orange? It's going to be orange juice. It doesn't matter how I open it. If I slice it, if I throw under the truck, if I throw it against the wall, it doesn't matter. What comes outside is orange juice. Okay? It is the same with us. We have an appearance and an essence. The essence is the essence. The appearance can change. Okay, I can do hair, I can do different clothing. That doesn't matter. The essence is what matters. So when you think that I'm all nice and so, and somebody, let's say Marcelo, comes to me and tells me something that I don't like it, and I don't take it well, and I react badly, and I start, attacking him and telling bad words and things like this. And then all of you are going to say, wow, that was strange because you're so calm, you're so quiet. And I'm going to justify by saying, I still am. I'm the greatest person in the world. But it's just because he said that I didn't like. You see, that's the essence. That's the orange juice. I'm not that nice person. I am what you saw me doing to him, because that's my essence. That's the orange was sliced, and I was able to reveal what's inside. What we do with our enemies is this. We keep revealing our weaknesses every time one of these tagged enemies comes along the way. So what we're going to do here is a small, quick exercise, okay, in which I'm going to pretend that I'm going to show, this is a fictitious list, but I'm going to pretend that I'm going to show you who my enemies are, in the sense that we are getting to now. So now I know that the enemies are not really physical, it's different. So I'm going to pull out a form here that I wrote throughout the years, and we do this all the time. We are proud to say who our enemies are. Isn't that unbelievable? Yeah, I hate him because of this and this. So let's just say that in 1970, I labeled Joe as my enemy because he came up to the parking lot of the school with a brand new car. And I was supposed to be the first with the car, and I didn't take it well. And since that day, I just hate him. So I put him on my enemies list. And this is 1970, right? And this is 1970. And at times, I'm not going to say every day, but at times it comes to my mind. Maybe every couple of months or so. Every time that I go out and I see a new car in the parking lot, well, oh, I remember Joe, yeah. You see, it comes up at times. All right, here's a second one, 1983. Mary, she was my boss and she fired me, and I didn't understand why, and I didn't take it well. And I wished her all the worst. And I still do at times. So here and there, I remember, yeah, when I had that job, yeah, oh, that lady, that woman. And it keeps coming back. So these are only two of these, right? So she's approved. Number 3, James. Look at him, right? All nice and he stole my girlfriend in 1975, and I didn't take it well then, and I still don't take it well now. And it's been 20-some years, 30, 40 years, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We keep going back, revisiting these supposedly memories, okay? But we don't, the problem is not revisiting the memory, is make sense out of them. Just revisiting by revisiting. That's what we do all the time. We're not extracting anything out of it, most of us. So he stole my girlfriend, and I can't take it. He's still on my list. Here's the next one, Susie, 1988. I was the first in line to my standards, to my knowledge. I was the first in line for a promotion. He got the promotion. Oh no, I can't take that. That was too much. So she's my enemy. You see, she might not even know that I'm feeling this way, but she's my enemy, declared enemy that I declare to myself, not to her necessarily. So she's also on my list. And then Mario, in a past life, he shot me. And when I get close to him, I don't feel comfortable at all. I never want to be close to him. I don't know exactly why. I can't explain, but I just kind of hate him in straight words. And I don't want to be close to this guy. So if he walks in, I'm just going to slightly, politely get out because I don't want to be close to him. So he's on my list too. Here's another one, Nick. Nick works in the main office in the same building that I work. And he's a very slow typist. And every time I have to go and deliver some papers to him, he has to type a few things and return the papers to me, and I can't stand that. I'm not patient enough. He's just like this, and I can't take it. So every time I have to go to Nick, it's a nightmare. I already go with this feeling that I hate this guy, I can't take this anymore, I hate this job. You see, the thing piles up. Okay, so here's another one. The last one, Mr. Fox. He's a cashier at the supermarket here, which I go 3 or 4 times a week, and I have to deal with this. So when I go in, I already look at his line to make sure I'm not going to go to his line. So I'm looking for other lines because I don't want to go through his, because he's very slow. He doesn't do in the speed that, to my standard, he's supposed to operate. So I hate this guy. I never go into his line. So he's also on my list. So you see, these are little things that we do. We keep doing year after year. What this is the same list, the very same list compiled in a different format. So it's the same people with the same reasons and so on and so on and so on. Okay? Now, let's say, for example, first guy here, Joe, who brought the new car to the parking lot, and I didn't like it. Why didn't I like it? It doesn't have to necessarily do with the car, with the physical object. It's just because there's an underlying feeling that took place, and that feeling is what makes me put him on the list. Okay? So for each of these things, there's an underlying feeling. So we can look here, for example, Joe, envy. I can't deal with that. He brought a new car. I wanted to be the first to show up with a new car. Envy. And so and so and so. If you go down the list here, resentment, revenge, impatience. These are things, okay, that make me put these people on the list. Now, if you think about this, for example, let's say Joe. Each one of these people is once on the list, but they could be more than once. For example, Joe could not only just brought the new car in 1970, but he could have stolen my girlfriend in 1971. So he would be on my list twice. You okay with that? Follow the logic? So some people here could be on my list 5 times, 20 times, right? So we can rank the list based on how many times these people are on the list. So let's say, for example, that Joe is on my list 10 times for 10 different reasons. He would be at the top of my list. And then comes the next one, which is on my list, let's say 8 times, and so on. So we can rank the list, right? Now, the worst case scenario, if I'm ranking this from top to bottom, okay, worst enemy going down to lowest enemy, if there is one person in our life, okay, that brings all of these things here, that reveals all of these underlying feelings all at once, this would be my worst enemy, wouldn't it? This would be my worst enemy. Everything together in one shot, just like that. That would be my number one enemy, okay? Meaning all of the above, okay? Do we know somebody that has done this to us or does this to us? Well, what happens when you read, for example, the gospel? You go through each passage and you identify yourself saying to yourself, you don't declare this, you don't publish on the internet, but we say to ourselves, wow, He's teaching this and I'm not doing this. Oh, I haven't learned that. Wow, that's maybe for me. Wow, this is a difficult one. That's what happens to us as we go along and read the messages of Jesus. So that means as we read what he was trying to teach us, he becomes the one with most incidences of all these revealing situations that will bring up in us our weaknesses, because he's just pointing to us. That was his job, to reveal that to us so we can get better. Now look at this. How can Jesus be my worst enemy? Isn't something wrong here? Something is wrong. What is wrong? What is wrong is that the titles of the columns are not right. The enemy, as we know, is not the enemy. The enemy is the feeling. The enemy is within. The enemy is hatred. It doesn't matter the name of the person that showed me that. It doesn't matter if it's Joe, Mary, Susan. We don't care. You see, the thing is, it's within my domain. These people, they are helping me get a free list, no cost. Here's your free list of problems that you need to work on for free. We need to do something with the list, obviously, but they are here to reveal where I have not yet mastered. I'm not good enough on this thing. I don't know how to deal with envy. I got a problem there. I don't know how to take well resentment, for example. And so I'm not patient enough. And so and so. So these things, the enemies, are all within. Okay, so how do we turn around, if that's possible, right? First of all, we have to interpret the list. The list is composed of two things, right? Me and my enemies. So here they are. Here's me and here are my enemies. Now, if you think about what is the direction of these feelings, it's from me to them or from them to me? It's from me to them. Some of these supposedly enemies don't even know they're on my list. Okay? So the direction, the general direction of the feelings is from me to them. So it's like this. If that's the direction, where's the source? On me or on them? It's on me. So the source is here. Now think about this. If I am the source of, let's say, impatience, okay? How can I be patient if I am the source of impatience? How can I love my enemies if I'm the source of hatred? How can I be tolerant if I'm the source of intolerance? You see, where we need to work on is not on the left side of the list, the names of the helpers. It's on the right side of the list. It's on the feelings and our moral standards that brought us here and put us here as we are today. That's why we come to the Spiritual Center, because we want to learn how to deal with these things, overcome all these difficult situations that we put ourselves in. That's why we're here. We need to work on these things. All of the, we're going to show like 9 of these feelings. These are the enemies. The enemy is within. It's within us. You put a label, you put a name to, I don't know, aggressiveness. Oh, aggressiveness because of him and her. They might not even know. My boss might not even know I hate him, because I don't have the nerve to tell him, because I'm going to lose my job. You see? So it's not him. He's here to tell me one thing. Silently tell me one thing. You don't know how to deal with this, and this. That's what the enemies are in our lives for. One great example is Saul. Okay, before converting into Paul, what was he doing? He was going after all the, they weren't called Christians, but all the Christians to be, okay, because he didn't understand what they were trying to do, and so and so and so. And then he converts. So he goes to Damascus, then he goes through his conversion, comes back, goes meet Peter. Now look at this. When he comes back to meet Peter and the apostles, they look at him. First of all, they're afraid. He came to kill us, because they don't know a certain conversion took place. But what does he do, Paul? he explains this is what happened, and I believe in Jesus, and so and so and so. Now, who changed? All the 12 apostles or Paul? He changed. The source has to change. Peter never changed. Peter was the same fisherman doing his stuff. Andrew was the same fisherman doing his stuff. They were all the same. Now he became Paul because he changed. The change has to take place at the source. Another example like this is in a movie. I say the movie, not the book, because the movie has images, so it's easier for us to explain. If you look at the movie, there's a scene where André Luiz goes through all the trouble and then he recovers and so on and so on. And he's allowed to come back into his old house to revisit his, I don't know if you call it widow or wife, whatever it is, right? So he goes back to the house to see the kids and the wife. And she had remarried, and the husband, the current husband, was not feeling well. He was going through difficult times in terms of health. And he looks at it, he is in shock because she was married to somebody else. And he so in the movie, it's interesting because it shows him looking at them, and in the back is like a nice garden, a nice house, and so on. So when he looks at them, the image on the back changes, and what they show is the dark zones, the lower zones. And he turns around and he starts feeling not well and a sensation of fainting. And he remembers why. He said, well, hold on, that's because I changed my pattern. So I'm going to turn around and change back. And that's what it does. And the scenario in the back changes back. It's an interesting thing. Who changed? Him, not the scenario. He changed. He was the source of that thing. Okay? All right, let's try to start wrapping up here. Who are the enemies and where they are? We've spoke about this. Now, number 3. Why should I love them? Okay, understand who they are and where they are. But why should I love these people, the supposedly enemies? Okay. Well, a few ideas here. First of all, it's my opportunity to practice love. If I don't practice love, I'm undermining my own evolution. I have to do that. One day, sooner or later, I have to do that. That's my opportunity. And like I said here, we are led to think that the ego is the essence. No, the essence is the orange juice. And it's there with all these things that we discussed about. Number 2, it's an opportunity for growth. I can grow from there. I can learn something from the list, work on the list, and do something in my own favor. The evolution is a consequence of experiences and exchange of experiences and emotions. So I have to go back to these people that I tagged as enemies and redo another exchange of energies. I had a personal, very interesting situation in the past. Somebody that worked with me just told me something that I didn't like. You can't do this job well, you're not good for that. And I didn't take well, that's many years ago. I don't take that well. So, it was really hard on me at the time. And then I became spiritist. I started coming to the center many years later. And then I said, well, now I understand what happens. He might not even know that I still hate him so much to this day, and I still think of that particular conversation today. He might not even know. So I said, how am I going to turn this around? Now I understand why, now I know why now. How am I going to turn it around? So what I did is I went back to getting close to him again, without telling him why. Just, oh, you're here. What a coincidence. Which I created the situations to be close to him. And you started practicing, and we were in different conversations all the time, and now we're good friends. So it's one of these things we have to take responsibility. The ball is in our court. Don't expect them to change. They don't have anything to do with this, except that they're here to show us what we do. Number 3, why should I love them? The other face. Okay, that's the kid, the 3-year-old kid with a fist. He comes with hatred. I hug him, and I show love. That's the other face. Okay, that's what we need to do. He's my enemy because of ABC. I'm going to do CBA, which is the reverse of that. Okay. Number 4, mastering myself. I can't master myself if I don't have a list, or if I don't know what I need to master myself on. These people are giving me my list for free. Here's what you have to work on. Okay. Number 5, self-esteem. That's important because, for example, somebody that is on my list is my enemy. and we don't have a good relationship, of course. It might be the case where I want to go back to him in a way and help him get his self-esteem up, help him feel better in my presence, because then the feeling of the aggressiveness or whatever it was towards me is going to stop. When I feed him with good things, he's not going to feed back with bad things. So it's going to increase his self-esteem, which is going to revert into a good relationship again. One other thing, if we have somebody that we just hate and you can't love this person, it's impossible to love this person. That's my challenge. Make him lovable. That's my challenge. When I make him lovable, I got a lot of bonus hours. That's one of my goals, make him lovable. He's not lovable, let's walk away from it. No, the ball is in my court. I'm going to make him lovable. Okay? All right, so this is why I should love them. How? How does that start? How are we going to make this thing happen? First of all, changing vibrations. I cannot carry vibrations of impatience, intolerance, all those things that we saw, resentment and so, and I want to be friendly with somebody that is living the opposite. I can't. I have to change my patterns first. If the problem that I have with Joe is envy, I can't support envy anymore. Otherwise, I'm not going to change. The change is on my side always. Allan Kardec in the Spirit's book, in the Gospel, tells us, actually the Spirit tells him, and I'm just taking the phrase, they tell us this: do not retain any of these things. Do not retain or feed resentments, vengeance, hatred. Because if you retain, you become the source of it. If I am the source, how am I going to change? How things are going to change if I am the source. Okay? Number 3. How can I do this thing? Self-evaluation. That's what St. Augustine was saying. At the end of the day, just quickly go through your day and try to pick up the things you should have done different. You should have been maybe this way instead of that way. Yeah, that's a nice way to do it, but you have to act upon it. It's just not just a fact of collecting information each day. At the end of the day, on the first day, at the end of the day today, envy. The neighbor got a new car. Tomorrow, envy. The other neighbor got a new car. And I don't do anything. I mean, I have the list, but I have to do something. The list is not the fix. It requires action on my part. It's responsibility. Feeling guilt is not enough. Guilt is only good if it brings changes. I can feel guilty about something and just keep that and don't do anything. Right? Now, I feel guilty because I didn't do this 30 years ago. I still feel guilty. That's not going to do anything. It's not going to bring any benefits. Now, for me to be able to work with the enemy in reverting the process, the first thing I need to do is forgive, which automatically includes in self-forgiveness. I have to forgive myself by feeling this way, then forgive him for whatever he did or whatever I put into my list for, and then we start the process. Law of cause and effect. This is a very interesting passage by Spirit Emmanuel. I'm just going to read it to you. Those who hurt others definitely don't know what they were doing, right? Since they ignore the responsibilities that it carries within the law of cause and effect. What does it mean in practical terms? It means I put somebody on my list, okay, because, intolerance, that's what I'm signing up for. I just sign up for intolerance. That's what I'm going to get, okay? When you sign up for a math class, you don't expect the teacher to teach you history because you sign up for a math class, okay? All right, let's do some quick reflection so we can close. Number 1, the meaning of the enemies. We need to understand that. We need to understand what the meaning of the enemies are. They're not enemies because they want to physically threaten me or anything like this. That's not it. When I label them as enemies, I'm displaying something within myself that needs to be corrected and fixed. Number 2, think about a small kid, okay? And they want to, let's say, just break the vase on the table. It costs $2,000. And you're not going to let him. Okay, you're going to try to teach him, don't do this, don't do that. And at one point, he might just get real mad. And I hate you. And he starts trying to do things to hurt us, and they do, right? Because they're learning, they're still learning. So what do we take from this? 30 years later, that kid is going to sit with the same father where they had their argument, and they're going to laugh at it. And I say, remember when I tossed fire on your bed? Oh yeah, I remember that. There's a lot of laugh. What changed? The fact didn't change. So what changed is the interpretation. It's the sense of responsibility. You see, it's all responsibility. If I don't take responsibility for what I did, do not understand. When I'm 30 years old, now I understand that I shouldn't have tossed fire on the desk or something. You see, that changes. We need to think, we need to concentrate on changing these things. So these enemies, so in this little situation here, when the kid is 3 years old, the father is the worst enemy. You're just my worst enemy because I want to break the house, I want to toss fire on the house, and you don't let me. You're my worst enemy. 30 years later, you're my best friend. How can it be? It's a matter of interpretation. We need to interpret the presence of the supposedly enemies in our lives. Number 3, in the old translations of some of the books by Spirit Emmanuel and Andrea Luis, we were using the word dark zones or lower zones. The new translations, they decided to keep the original word in Portuguese. The original word is called umbral, A-U-M-B-R-A-L, umbral. So they decided to keep the original word. So as we keep putting people on our list, what we are doing is umbralizing ourselves. That's all we're doing. We're umbralizing ourselves. We are walking towards dark zones and lower zones. That's what we're doing. So one thing we need to do is the other way around, de-umbralize ourselves. Take these people off the list. But for me to be able to take these people off the list, what has to change is the underlying feeling, the underlying emotion. That is what has to change. Otherwise, I'm always going to remember Joe bringing a car to the parking lot. I'm always going to remember my boss firing me, and I'm always going to remember this and this. That's not what we want to do. We want to reverse things. Okay? Number 4 here, locating the enemy. This is a very interesting African proverb. When there is no enemy within, the enemies outside cannot hurt me. That's very interesting. It is. Because if I don't have any of these things inside, these things are not going to hit me. That was Jesus. You don't have any of these bad feelings inside. So none of the Pharisees would attack him and say this and say that. All right. You just keep saying, I'm okay with that. You see? How can I value my enemies? I need to seek for the meaning of each enemy in my life. So if I get my list today and I go back from the 60s and 70s and everything, if we just start remember things, bring up to memory. Oh yeah, I remember in school this thing happened. Wow, there was such a bad feeling, a bad situation. Why is that? Because I didn't know how to deal with this. Do I know how to deal with this today? Am I better? Am I better than 20 years ago, 10 years ago? Okay? Number 6, the enemy is within. So love your enemies means love yourself, because it's all inside. I can't love a physical enemy if I don't love myself. It's not possible, because I am the source. And I'm going to just close with this before we go into Q&A. We're going to have some Q&A now. Yeah, okay. Look at what's written here. Our supposedly enemies, that's why it's in quotes, okay, can be inconvenient and troublesome at times if we do not understand what Jesus is trying to tell us. Okay, so the enemy, for all standards, is the person, not the underlying feeling. Now, think about this image here. When Jesus comes and tells us this, love your enemies, and the entire speech, who is he talking to? Who is his audience? Who is listening to him? So let's say he's right here talking to all these people. Who is listening to him? You see, if we think it is Andrew the fisher, Joel the farmer, Peter the fisherman, Matthew, the tax collector, then we didn't understand anything. Because Jesus talks to incarnated immortal spirits. That's what he's talking to. At this level, unconditional love makes sense. Below this level, it doesn't make any sense. So he's not talking to Peter the fisherman. He's talking to a spirit who is at the present time, during the speech, is incarnated, and it has the name of Peter, and it has a profession that is fisherman. And so for everyone in there. The message comes across time, and it hits us today because it is immortal. It's not a message at the physical level. That's why it's here still today. We need to understand that this is at the spirit level. It crosses lifetimes. There's a much bigger, broader understanding of what is said. If we stay at the physical level, love your enemies, how come? Just think about that. Thank you very much. I don't know if you want to have any comments, suggestions. I'm open.